it now. So I just want to introduce myself. My name is Justine. I am the Public Relations Director at Alpha Arts. And just for those, just a little reminders that Alpha Arts is committed to helping humanities and social science students. We're run at the University of Toronto, and it's run by students and alumni. And we offer anything from academic choices, community activities, background improvement, and just general career advice. And today I am so excited to host the last and final session of the Careers in the Arts series, which I believe has been a wonderful success in collaboration with Alpha Arts and the Power Plant Contemporary Art Gallery. And today I'll be speaking to Jaime Eisen, who's right here, and she's the Marketing and Communications Manager at the Power Plant Gallery. Jaime, how are you today? How's it going?
Oh, thanks, Justine. I'm excited to chat.
Yeah, so I'm just going to start just very basic questions. What is your job? What do you do? What are your tasks? Just everything in general. Tell us.
Wow. Okay, so that's a big question. As you mentioned, I am the Marketing and Communications Manager at the Power Plant. So I run the communications department, and at the Power Plant, that kind of means a little bit of everything. So from like traditional marketing, digital marketing, PR, you know, we work on the website. I do a lot of copy editing, a lot of copywriting. We handle production. We work with graphic designers and other external partners. It is kind of an amalgamation of every communications job. So that makes it really exciting because no 2 days are the same. No 2 hours are the same, I would say. I wear a lot of different hats, and I find myself jumping, you know, throwing my writing hat on and quickly taking that off and thinking about production and specs and, you know, RGB versus all of those kinds of different things. So it is a really exciting role. We're a small but mighty team, and I really enjoy getting the word out there about the Power Plant, which I may be biased, but I think is the most fantastic gallery.
Well, that kind of leads into the second question. I feel like you kind of answered this already, but what would you say is the most interesting aspect of the job? Is it that for the fact that you have so many different roles, or what is it exactly?
I would say there are 2 answers to this question. One of them being the most interesting thing about my specific job, which is, yes, that I get to wear so many different hats, try so many things, and that I have the trust from my colleagues to try different things and to really experiment and get excited about the kind of communications initiatives that we're embarking on. And then the second part of that is, to me, the most interesting part of my job is the actual environment itself, not the physical environment, but my colleagues are all so deeply passionate about the work that we show. The artists are incredible, innovative, they're creating really thought-provoking work. So being in that kind of environment that's constantly challenging you emotionally, intellectually, within and outside the confines of my actual role, that's the most interesting part of my job.
No, I love it. Personally, I'm actually very interested in communications as well, which is why I was so excited to talk to you today. And that is the next question, which I am very curious about. What skills do you think are most important for your role, or just generally in communications? Because I do know you've had a variety of communications roles, even in the past.
Yes.
So even as you move on in your career, what skills do you think are most important for someone who is interested in communications, PR, marketing, stuff like that?
Sure. This is going to sound a bit cheesy and perhaps silly, but communication skills are really essential. I have found in my career, and no career is, I can never provide advice that is one size fits all, right? I can only talk about my lived experience and hope that that's helpful, and I recognize that my path is kind of kooky, but for me, understanding how to to work with people, understanding how to translate people's ideas into more marketable language, especially in the arts. That's really key, without diluting those ideas. So I think writing skills, but on a much broader level, just the ability to kind of relate to people, to listen, to develop an understanding of what their goals are, and then to merge those objectives with your own and disseminate them, which is a fancy way of saying communication skills. On a more granular level, obviously there are a lot of different things in each kind of communications module that I think are important skills for PR. It's essential to have a kind of Rolodex or database. It's essential to have really strong research skills if you're in PR, because journalists are constantly getting bombarded with pitches. And so you want to really find the right angle and make sure that you are getting in there with the right fit for that journalist, for that publication or outlet. So research skills. I think for social media, obviously, you have to have some technical aptitude, although it is getting easier and easier to make compelling social content. But creativity is a huge thing. It's that thinking out of the box, trying something new, taking risks, and not being afraid that there may be consequences, but being excited that there may be huge rewards.
Yeah, no, I've had one communications role in my life. And what I loved is actually what you said, the creativity. You really get to work to create such amazing plans to promote something, whatever it is. So I actually believe it is such a creative field in its own. And I don't think a lot of people understand that, because communication, yeah, it seems very dry sometimes, because it's like, oh, communication, let's do a lot of writing, a lot of research, but it's so creative in so many ways.
It really is. I find that there's this bizarre dichotomy that people have created between arts and business, and that the communications roles within an arts context often get relegated to the business side, which I get it, but it's so creative. You have to be so nimble and agile and really, really strategic, and that is kind of an art. I don't want to pat myself on the back too much, but there is a lot of art to it.
Yeah, no, for sure. And the next question is kind of similar. What do you think someone who wants to work in communications, what personality should they have? So obviously a very obvious answer to that is you got to be very extroverted and kind of be very outgoing. But then again, this is also something for introverted people, for someone that is more quiet, correct?
Yeah, I don't know if I agree. I think there is that idea that you have to be an extrovert. I think it is important to be able to relate to people, but I find that sometimes introverts can do that in way more, I don't know, just very different ways that kind of connect on a deeper level. I am a deeply obnoxious person, so I'm the kind of extrovert that I will go out and meet everyone and talk to everyone and get to know them. And I love that. That's my comfort zone. But I think, I used to work in a business with a partner and we just worked with small business owners and creatives to kind of create a more accessible PR environment. But she is a very introverted person in the traditional sense, but she often connected with clients and with potential partnerships and, media personalities and journalists in a way that I couldn't, and vice versa. So I don't know that there is a prescribed persona you should have for communications. I think you should be open to learning about people and to learning about new things. I really do think kind of openness and that out of the box thinking would be the two personality traits that I would recommend over a kind of introvert extrovert duality.
Interesting. Yeah. So we're going to move on and we're going to talk a bit about your personal education and just sort of go into that a bit more. So very basic. Did you have a plan in mind for your career when you began your bachelor's? So basically when you started studying, what did you want to do? Did you already know that you were going to do what you're doing right now?
Absolutely not is the short answer. The long answer is that I watched Gilmore Girls and decided like Rory, wanted to be a journalist with a capital J. And so I remember I made a PowerPoint presentation to my parents, I think, and said, here are all the reasons you're going to send me to Columbia Journalism School. And they said, absolutely, we will not do that. Unless you want to find a way to pay for it with your Boston Pizza hostess gig or whatever. And I very quickly realized that I was not going to Columbia because American education is expensive and Canadian schools are also expensive and also fantastic. So I ended up at Concordia in their journalism program doing a double major in film studies because I love movies. Really, there was no other explanation for that. But the journalism program at Concordia is really good, super progressive, really talked about the barriers in the industry at the time, which are very different now, but continue, and had a lot of focus on digital, which was actually emerging as a journalism focus at that time. So I found it to be really helpful. But after approximately 2 years of my undergraduate education, I realized I did not want to be a journalist. I did not have that kind of tenacity that beat reporters need to chase a story. I was more interested in taking my time to tell stories, and that is not what you need to be a news reporter. I never wanted to be a news reporter. I was very keen on doing arts journalism, so reviews. I did a lot in undergrad for the Montreal Mirror, RIP. I interned at Vice. I was writing for the school paper a lot, lots of music reviews, theater reviews, profiles on artists, which I loved and actually still do freelance to this day. But it just wasn't for me. So I started thinking about where I would go next, and I got a fantastic internship opportunity at a really arts-focused PR firm. And I had never thought about PR because in journalism school, all of the snooty kids who are going to be beat reporters will talk about how much they hate publicists, and publicists get a really bad rap. You know, you see a lot of Samantha Jones-like characters in media, but PR is hard. It is hard to craft and spin a compelling story and cut through the noise. So I was really lucky to get that opportunity when I did, and it opened my eyes to a kind of new stream that I had never thought of for myself. And then from there, I kind of continued in PR for a number of years while doing freelance journalism on the side, as well as my own kind of creative writing and developing and honing my other interests, I guess. Mm-hmm. Wow, that's a long-winded answer to your question.
No, it's perfect actually, because you answered the next question kind of wow, because the next question was what actually drew you into this field. So would you say it was that internship that you had at the PR firm?
I think for me, I've always known that I wanted to work in the arts, and that I have always had an interest in, I mean, my skill set has always led me towards a career in writing. I've always wanted to be a writer, and I've always wanted to work in the arts. The being a writer thing has not worked out in the traditional sense. It has worked out in a lot of other ways. I've gotten to write for some incredible places, interview some amazing people, and I do a lot of my own creative projects, but I am a writer in a different way, which is that let me rewind and say, I think my career trajectory, I would sum it up in one sentence, and that is I have created a path for myself where I have been able to tell stories that are meaningful to me. So work with people who do really incredible things and help them to tell their story. So for me, as somebody who's always been a boisterous, extroverted, outgoing person, being able to be behind the scenes has actually been a really humbling, but also just a really beautiful process to not tell people stories for them, but help them create a platform to tell their own. So I guess the answer would be yes. Technically, that PR internship introduced me to kind of arts communications, but it also increased that hunger to learn more about, you know, stories and causes that I'm passionate about and help spread the word.
Mm-hmm. No, I like how you make the arts seem very, very personal. That's something I personally love about the arts, is that it can be so close to you and you really get to learn other people's stories, share them, or help people amplify their stories.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's something you don't find in many other industries. And I feel like the arts, it's about people. It's about, yeah, those stories, and about just embracing the world in a certain way. So I like how you say that, because I think that's something that makes the arts just like incredible. So yeah.
Yeah, and I did move outside of the arts for a little bit. I think when you're just out of school, there's kind of this twofold feeling of the world is my oyster, and then there are no jobs, and what do I do? Which is, both of those things are kind of true at the same time. And so I ended up in a more corporate PR role, which I'm so grateful for, even though it's not my thing, because I learned a lot of the organizational tactics that are required in a communications role. I built a really strong network and Rolodex of contacts. I made a lot of great friends. I learned a lot about industries that I knew nothing about, like healthcare, like like hotels and hospitality and tourism. I got to dabble in a more corporate role in the film industry, which was really cool. You know, so in that early phase of my career, I think I tried a lot of different stuff, and was never snobby about it, even if it was outside of the arts, and just enjoyed it and learned from every single opportunity.
Mm-hmm. No, that actually is the perfect segue to the next question. So I do believe that the majority of our audience are still students, and something that I struggle with when I was a student is that when I was in class, I often felt like, oh, I have to do more. I have to do stuff outside of the classroom. And so I ended up doing so many different small jobs. And like, sometimes I didn't even know why I was doing them. I was just like, I have to do something. I have to do so much to get the experience. Mm-hmm. So what do you think, for a student, what should a student focus on? Should they focus on their studies, or should they kind of find like a balance between working outside of school and focusing on school? Or what do you recommend? Because I do believe that's what a lot of people are struggling with, because a lot of universities offer very, very good jobs, but they don't really say what the job is actually good for.
Mm-hmm. That's a really great question. And it's tough because I find that the job market can be very chicken or egg, and that you need experience to enter it. But how do you get that experience if you don't have experience? I found schools to be a great opportunity to try out a bunch of different internships and volunteer opportunities, but my studies were always the number one priority. I mean, school's expensive. You're paying a lot to be there. Often, like for me, and I'm sure for many students, it's about maintaining a scholarship, things like that. And then obviously getting a job to make money if you need to, you know, have an income to live. That's also very important. So there's nothing wrong with not taking unpaid internships or volunteer opportunities in order to take a paying job that's maybe not in the fields that you want to. If you need, we live in a capitalist society, and the reality of it is we need money to survive. So I just want to be clear about that. But for me, I was lucky enough that I was able to find paying internships in the summer, which I found to be really constructive for my career. I learned a lot about what I was looking for and what I wasn't looking for through those opportunities. Jobs with school are important because they pay, and also because, listen, at the end of the day, any experience, and I'm saying this from my PR brain, can be spun into experience that's applicable for the job you want. So if you are working as a TA, or you are working even in like the student affairs office, or you are working with Alpha Arts, all of these things, you are developing organizational skills, communication skills, all of these different things that can be thrown in a cover letter in a really compelling way. Mm-hmm. So no job is too small if it's paying you and getting you closer to where you want to be in any way. I think unpaid internships are a really tricky topic. I have taken unpaid internships and I don't know how I feel about that now. I really think people need to be paid for their labor. And I think that we've built an industry, specifically in the communications industry, based on unpaid labor. And I don't love that. Like I said, there is that awful chicken and egg of you need experience to get experience. So if you know what path you want to go down and there is an opportunity to help you get there, I say jump on that opportunity if you are in the position where you can afford to, but really understand the value of your labor and your time, and try and work with people who understand that as well.
So in terms of like volunteer experience or getting a volunteer job, would you say that's something you could still do depending on how the program is? Like, for example, I know a bunch of volunteer programs that will offer you like a lot of perks in return. Yeah. As in, like, let's say for like a film festival or something, you volunteer for a film festival and in turn you get to like have access to the entire festival because you're working for them. Would you say that's something that's good?
Yes. Yeah. I'm talking more in terms of unpaid internships are structured like actual jobs, right?
Yeah.
So it gets a little tricky there when you should be paying someone like an assistant salary and you're not paying them. For credit, internships are fabulous if you can take them as a class, and so it's not detracting from your schoolwork or your time. Like, great opportunity, go for it. And volunteer opportunities, absolutely. If you can balance that, do them. I loved volunteering at film festivals and things like that. Oh yeah, that's the best stuff. Definitely, if you can get free tickets to TIFF, jump on that.
Yep, that's the festival I was speaking about. I was a volunteer for close to 4 years, and it's an incredible program, and a lot of people that started as volunteers actually ended up working for the festival. So you do have a chance to grow. I think at the end, the conclusion we're coming to is that volunteering is good. It just depends on how the volunteer program is structured, and that it's basically not an actual job and they just don't pay you, where it's a volunteer program that is very light labor because you are working for free, but that you still get something in return for it.
Yeah, as long as you're feeling, listen, I'm someone who has taken an unpaid internship before. Yeah. I don't think there's anything wrong with it from the student side. I think there's something wrong with it from the organization side. I think, again, people should be paid for their labor, but as long as you are feeling comfortable and valued for what you have to offer an organization, and you feel like you're being compensated in some way, whether it's school credit, cash, or great experience, like if you feel like it's the experience of a lifetime, as long as you feel like you are getting something for your labor, go for it. There are also great things, like there's so many small grassroots organizations around Toronto that obviously can't afford to pay students, but that do need the help. As I'm thinking largely of activism and activist organizations, but there are great opportunities there to self-start, to really see a project through and to learn so much. So again, if you're feeling like you're getting something out of it, whether it's like helping a great cause or, again, the experience of a lifetime or tickets to TIFF, whatever it is, jump on the opportunity as long as you feel valued.
No, I absolutely agree. So the next question is, but before I go, just a reminder for everybody, if you do have a question, we have the Q&A option just below the screen. So feel free to answer anything, ask anything. Sorry about that. And we'll get to it at the very end. But the next question is about your master's, because I do know you have a master's. How was it different from your bachelor's, and how different was your mindset when you started studying your master's?
Great question. People do master's degrees or continue their education for a number of reasons. For me, I always knew I wanted to do a master's because I love school. If I could, I would be a student forever. I thrive in that environment and I just love it. So I always knew that I wanted to go back to school to pursue learning, rather than a lot of people will do a master's and they're fantastic, for example, like an MBA program, which actually is imperative for getting the job that you want. The master's I took, which was in like critical media studies, has nothing to do with any jobs, but was an incredible, incredible experience. And I got to write a 160-page book of a thesis on a topic that I'm extremely passionate about. And I learned so much from my professors and from my peers. And it was tough to balance working while doing a master's in order to, you know, afford to send a master's degree. But I was lucky that I had been working for a number of years after my bachelor's before I pursued my master's. So my mindset was very different. I had experienced a lot of the professional world at that point and felt ready to transition back into education. And once I graduated from my master's program, I was ready to dive back into working for an organization like the Power Plant.
Mm-hmm. So would you say a master's is something you recommend for art students? Because right now I just graduated and everyone is telling me I have to do a master's. So it's very interesting because like a lot of people, it's the stereotype that, oh, you studied art history, you have the useless degree, you need to do more, you need to do a master's or even get a PhD. What do you think? What do you encourage students to do once they graduate?
It really depends on your career path, honestly. If you want to go into academia, yes, you have to pursue higher education and more degrees and more letters after your name. If you are interested in learning more about a specific topic, a master's is a fantastic opportunity to do that. But there are also wonderful free courses that you can find or book lists, things like that. If you're just interested in learning and don't want to commit to doing a program. It's hard to say, especially in the communications field, because I know people who didn't graduate from an undergrad and I know people who have PhDs, and both groups of people are extremely good at their jobs. So I don't think that a master's is essential for my role per se. I think experience and passion and kind of a showing of skill sets is more important for a role like mine. That said, I loved my master's. I learned so much about the field that I was entering. It's hard to say. I know that people will tell you when you're graduating, okay, so what are you doing next? Are you working? Are you going back to school? Take your time and make that decision for yourself without those external pressures, because school is a big commitment in a lot of ways, and it's not guaranteed to get you a job unless you're going into a field like unless you're doing an MBA, unless you're doing, you know, your CPA, unless you're doing law school. To work in the arts, you don't necessarily require a kind of professional degree like that. So it really is a case. Everyone is a different, every single career path has a different answer to that question, I guess. And every single individual has a different answer to that question. It's good to pad a resume. It's also great to showcase your experience in other ways if you feel more comfortable doing that.
Yeah, and I agree, especially right now with the pandemic that happened, a lot of people are using online resources where you can take courses for free right now. And a lot of universities all over the world are offering courses for free. So I think the access to information, the access to learning, it's getting a lot easier without actually having to get the degree. And also you could just watch like YouTube videos like all day and you can learn so much. So
Lisa.com, which I'm sure you have access to as U of T students, is the best tool for learning different programs. I mean, the most important education in my role is technology is changing so rapidly, and communications is becoming increasingly digital. I feel like I sound like a grandmother when I say things like that. It's fine. It's becoming increasingly digital, and you know, now people are so adept in coding, for example, which is something I wish I had more of an understanding of, because it would help me customize our CMS. and I think social media tools, digital, there's just so much right now. That kind of learning is really important. And there are some amazing free resources. Like I said, lynda.com tutorials, YouTube tutorials. There's digital marketing courses. I think the University of Alberta, I don't go on Coursera. There's so many courses right now that you can take a look at. But having those in your back pocket is a fantastic thing to whip out in a job interview, for example, and understanding analytics, understanding reporting and metrics, like all of those things are a kind of digital literacy that is required for communications positions now. I would say a master, like a formal master's degree, isn't necessarily.
No, I even learned recently, if you have a library card to the Toronto Public Library, you get access to this platform called Lynda, where you can take courses, something as easy as like Microsoft Excel, for example, and you really get such an amazing course on it. And at the end, you get a certificate, a free certificate that gets attached to your LinkedIn. So it looks very, very good. And you don't have to pay a single dollar for it, which is just incredible.
I loved Lynda all through school.
Yeah.
I took classes through my master's. I took classes in other departments, and Lynda was so helpful just because I was interested in, you know, animation and things like that. But Lynda was the best tool, so I highly recommend it.
I agree. All right, so we're going to move on to your job experience. Just a few questions about that. The first question is, how did you get your very first job? Like your very, very, very first job?
Oh gosh. Okay. My very first job, other than being like I assume you mean on my career path, not being like a camp counselor or working at Boston Pizza. I'm trying to think. My very first job in my field was a summer internship, a paid summer internship between first and second year university. It was at Canadian Living magazine, and I actually won a contest called the Canadian Living Journalism Prize because I submitted a piece, a large feature, and I won this incredible paid internship. It was awesome. I met so many fabulous people who really helped me on my career path, but also who helped me realize that I didn't necessarily want to work in a journalism setting. And then from there, the next summer, I was lucky to find that PR internship that I previously mentioned, which kind of opened up this new way of thinking about writing and communications and this whole new career path that I wasn't totally aware of. Really, for me, it was about meeting people. I find that most of the jobs I've gotten are because I have a robust network and because I have just met people, and also because I'm a bit of a self-starter. So I've really gone out of my way to kind of pitch myself in a bunch of different fields of communications, and like, you know, take every opportunity to learn about things like digital marketing, which wasn't my expertise 5 years ago, but now I am very well versed in. Jumping on things like free courses, asking people for help, asking people to go for coffee and to chat with you about what they do. And, you know, making sure you're developing reciprocal relationships as well, not taking advantage of people and not allowing people to take advantage of you. And then just really kind of following my passions, I would say, which again sounds so, but I've started a number of businesses or events or all of these different things with like-minded, passionate people that have kind of propelled me into new relationships, new connections, and new roles in my career.
So for a student who's still studying, what kind of jobs do you think they should focus on? Do you think that even if they want to go into the arts, they shouldn't necessarily focus too much on it right now and just really develop certain skills such as customer service, even working like a retail job or something? What do you think a student should focus on right now if they want to enter the arts in the future?
Again, it's kind of a case-by-case basis.
Yeah.
I think it is important to, you don't have to know what you want right now or ever. You don't have to, where you end up might be light years from where you thought you would and what you thought you wanted. And so honestly, developing skills is really important. Making connections is really important, but also finding a job that's right for your lifestyle in terms of your, you know, if you really are someone who needs to be focusing primarily on your studies, make that your priority. You're in school to learn and for a reason, so make it count and embrace that learning opportunity and let the job be secondary if it needs to be. If you're someone who's itching to get out of school and get that experience in a specific field, you know what you want, go and meet those people and have those coffees and wait for those opportunities to come up. And in the meantime, volunteer at like-minded organizations, find ways that you can contribute to organizations that you're passionate about. Reach out to people and ask them questions. There are always ways to, you know, learn to kind of sharpen your career tools without necessarily having that dream job.
No, I was told something very interesting a few weeks ago when I had an interview, and the person asked me about my arts experience, and I said, oh, since I just graduated, it's still very minimal, but I do have this experience and that experience, which was like all over the place. Like I said, I just worked like 100 different jobs at once, honestly. And it was very interesting because this person told me that he was very impressed by the amount of work that I did as a student, even though it had not really much to do with the arts, because he said that those are basic skills that cannot be taught anymore at a certain age, because you just kind of have to learn it when you can. But arts, it can always be taught. He said that it's okay if you don't have the arts experience necessarily, because it can be learned. It's always a learning experience. But if you have those essential skills, customer service, the very basic stuff, and if you focus on that, that can really help you move forward in the future. That's what he told me, and it stuck with me. I thought it was very interesting, that statement.
I agree with that completely. I think there are so many skills that are transferable between industries. So as long as, if you, for a communications role, if you have the base skills and you haven't worked in an art gallery before, I hadn't worked in an art gallery before I got the power plant role. I love art. I love contemporary art in particular, and I was a longtime visitor of the power plant, but I don't have an art history degree. I don't have a background in the visual arts. I have a background working with film, with music, like all sorts of different facets of the arts. I have, you know, I've worked, like I said, in corporate PR, all of those different things, but it really is about how you talk about those skills and how you express that those skills are applicable to the role you're applying for. Yeah. So put on your PR brain, because anything can be spun to make you the right candidate. And I don't mean that you should ever lie or necessarily exaggerate, but if you have worked a retail job for 5 years, that shows loyalty, consistency, customer relations, that shows organization, that shows so many things that are going to be applicable to your job, any job that you're applying for. So it's really about, rather than downplaying your experience, it's really finding all of the key points of that experience that make you a great candidate.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. It's even those small jobs, the amount of people you can meet. I worked at a retail store once, and the most people I worked with were artists, actually. And I really got to meet so many of them and learn about their projects, helped out with some of them even. So there's so many surprises in those jobs. So I think it's really beneficial to also focus on that as a student, because there's so much that you can find in it.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think it's important to take every opportunity. Like you said, well, not take every opportunity, but take every opportunity to learn or to meet people. I think, like you said, you can be walking down the street and meet somebody who could help you in your career. Yeah. Do I think you should talk to strangers? No. If you're in a controlled environment, like working a retail job and you're meeting artists, that's amazing experience. That is fantastic. You are building a Rolodex in your mind that you can sell to a potential employer.
Yeah.
It's all important. There's no such thing as a small job.
Absolutely. So the next question is more about your bigger jobs. So what was your first official job after university, and how was that transition? Because I feel like that in-between period when you just graduate and you're looking for your first job, I'm in that right now. It's a very confusing time, and it can be very depressing, honestly, sometimes. So how was that experience? How did you manage to get that job?
I was really lucky, and I had been interning at a different PR firm the summer before fourth year, and they liked me and kept me doing freelance work for them while I was going back to school in my fourth year at Concordia, and then they actually offered me a role the second I graduated. So I was really, really lucky. So lucky, but it was an interesting transition. It was bizarre to go from being a student, having that kind of independence where you decide what your hours are really, and going into a more structured environment where you're answering to someone in a more conventional sense, where you're working with colleagues who aren't your peers necessarily. They might be older than you, they might have more experience. And starting at the bottom of the food chain after being at the top of the food chain in school is it's a very weird time, but it's also just a weird time in life a lot if you've gone to school from 18 to 22 or whatever. It's just a weird time in your life.
Yeah.
That first job, I was terrified, but I just wanted to soak everything up like a sponge.
Yeah.
But also I found that something that's really helped me in my career path is that I've been very true to myself and never misrepresented myself as anything. So I can be a very professional person, but I will always be a little weird and kooky, for lack of a better term. I will never be the kind of buttoned up corporate type, and I actually found that to be useful working in corporate environments. So I found that my showing of personality in a very professional and controlled way actually became an asset in that first job, because it kind of set the tone for my trajectory at that company that I ended up working for about 4 years. And I got to really grow there and move up in the company because I had something to offer that was unique.
So that actually leads me into my final question, and I actually came up with that last night because I had a conversation with a friend who did the same degree as me. She's a recent grad, a wonderful, talented, and creative person, and she told me that she has been applying for jobs since March, and she said that every week all she gets is rejections, and it's getting to a point where she is starting to feel very demotivated, and she said that it's extremely depressing to graduate into a job world that is so bleak right now, for lack of a better word. It's the reality right now. And I'm in the same boat. Besides this, I have faced, honestly, many rejections the past few weeks. That's just how it is right now. So my question is, how do you stay motivated when you're facing a challenge at work? And I feel like, especially in the arts, it's extremely difficult for a lot of people right now because everybody is so talented in their own way, but it's so difficult to find something that works for you and that the employer will like you as well, or that there's a good match. She has told me that she has applied to hundreds of jobs and nothing has worked out for her. And even though this panel is to be encouraging and to say that the arts are great, but the reality is it's very difficult to find your place right now. So my question is, how do you stay motivated? What advice do you have for someone who is in that position? And what can you say to maybe offer a little bit of encouragement that it's not as hopeless as it feels sometimes?
Yeah, I think COVID has been a really tough position for a lot of people. It's certainly, like, even at the power plant, I'm so lucky to we are all so lucky to be employed currently in the arts, because there are a number of organizations around the world that are folding. The power plant stronger than ever. But I think I've been watching, you know, organizations that I love and people whose roles I've long admired just completely disappear.
Yeah.
And to be a student looking right now, it's really challenging because the job pool is extremely limited. That said, it is starting to open up more. There are roles. I would go on Work in Culture. I'm sure you all are. Use your school's job boards like crazy. Go on Work in Culture. To stay motivated right now, do some of those things that I mentioned earlier. Remind yourself why you're passionate about a career in the arts by starting a personal project with friends, with former classmates, with potential colleagues. You know, if you want to be a communications professional, if you want to work in social media, let's say, start an account that's just your own curated, you know, you can aggregate content or create your own content about certain arts organizations or artists that you're passionate about. You can start an online zine. You can come up with a group maybe to talk about these career woes and, you know, to help motivate each other. Really look to your community and look inside yourself and say, why am I passionate? And then translate that into something actionable so that you can feel accomplished, because a lot of that rejection and that kind of demoralization comes from that feeling of a lack of accomplishment. So if you can turn your excitement, if you can put your excitement into a personal project or into your community, I think that's an incredible thing to do. I think we are always taking resumes. Our internship programs are through school, so we do 4-credit internships. But we're always looking for volunteers. I think that if you enjoy being around art, volunteering at an art gallery is great because you get to be around the works. Obviously, right now we are closed to the public, but reach out to people who you admire, or you don't have to admire them, but reach out to people who you think might have good advice for you. Schedule a coffee, schedule a Zoom, write them an email and ask if they have time for a quick phone call. They might not, but they might. And that's not rejection. It's just you're putting yourself out there, and at least they'll remember your name, you know? So just, I know it's hard to stay motivated in this kind of job market, but keep going. You're all so smart, and the arts world will be lucky to have you.
I love that answer. So for that as well, would you say that networking, maybe for example on LinkedIn or something, is something that you could do? That's something I've been personally doing. It's actually worked out really well for me. For some reason, out of nowhere, I'm getting like a ton of invites to connect, and all I did was just add a new profile picture. So I don't know. So would you say that even just finding someone on LinkedIn that you feel like seems interesting and reaching out to them is something that you could do? Because I find I've tried to do it and it feels very awkward because it's like, hello, can you help me? Like that kind of like.
Yeah, depending on the person too, like if you do your proper research, often there's no need to be super formal. I find that also feel free to add me on LinkedIn and message me anytime, anyone. But I think LinkedIn's a great resource, but oftentimes people are getting all of those kind of standardized LinkedIn messages or emails from people looking to connect. I am always keen to do, or to answer someone who's like, hey, I am really passionate about this one particular thing, and you seem to have experience in that, and I would love to chat. Like, if you can connect with someone showing that you've done your research and know who they are and actually want to hear from them rather than or just like kind of blanketing the pool, I think that goes a long way.
Yeah, no, I agree, absolutely. Okay, so we have around 10 minutes left, and we do have 2 questions as of right now. If anyone would like to ask any other questions, please feel free to. So let me just look. Okay, so the first question for you, Jamie, is what does your day look like as a gallery PR person? What does public relations mean to you?
Oh boy. Okay, so I do not just PR at the power plant. I do handle all of the marketing endeavors as well as digital and PR and production with my team. So I find that I'm not doing PR tasks every day, but for example, right now, I am drafting a press release, and then from there, I will obviously disseminate it wide, and then do my research on key media targets, do very, very detailed research, and then craft catered pitches following up on that press release to each of those targets. I find that especially in the arts world where journalists are, and publications are fewer and further between. So journalists are really getting a lot of emails, doing that kind of research and really catering your pitches to an individual is so important rather than sending it wide and just seeing what happens. What does public relations mean to me? I have had a very, very varied experience in public relations. So my most recent traditional PR role was actually a little collective that I mentioned previously that a partner and I started, where we were doing PR or kind of creating a more collaborative approach to PR with small business owners and creatives who had traditionally not had the means to access a more traditional version of PR. So to me, public relations is many things, but it is largely about, like I said, kind of creating platforms to tell stories that matter to someone. Maybe not to me, maybe to me, but definitely making those stories matter and amplifying those voices. It's also things like creating media lists and developing press reports and all of those things that you will do in your first, second, third PR jobs. I will do till the day that I die. But that's part of PR too. Crisis comms is part of PR as well. Drafting press releases, editing them, sending them through, creating relationships and longstanding partnerships with media outlets and journalists. All of those different things fall into PR, but it's all about getting that story out there.
Okay. The second question for you is, what do you think of auditing a course in school? How do you use that kind of opportunity if you value it?
I have audited courses before. Like I said, I'm a huge school nerd, so I have audited courses, and I think it's super valuable if you have the time to do it. I think if it's a course that you feel will enhance your education or complement your education or teach you something wildly new, go for it. If you can take the time and do it, it is an amazing thing to do. I'm doing a course online right now with the University of Alberta, their Indigenous Histories in Canada course. So worthwhile. I am learning things that my stupid grade school Indigenous education would never have taught me, and I'm learning about the country I live in, and it's a really fantastic course, so I recommend that one. But any education opportunity is a good one in my books, but that's just my humble nerdy opinion.
Perfect. Are there any other questions from people? Anybody else?
I will say that definitely follow at the Power Plant TO on Instagram. We're going to be announcing some exciting stuff coming up, and there will be a lot more opportunities for students to connect with each other and with the arts in the fall. So watch that space. And like I said, feel free to add me on LinkedIn or email media@thepowerplant.org if you have any more questions about communications in the arts and how those things intersect, or what working in visual culture from this viewpoint looks like.
Yeah. Oh, actually, a question just showed up, so we'll answer that very quickly before we wrap up. So it was from the same person, I believe. She said, or he says, thank you. And how do you show the achievement of auditing a course, if I may ask?
That's hard. You can talk to, it depends if you want like a physical certificate or something. For me, the achievement is just having learned that and having added to my kind of toolkit. But on LinkedIn, there is that kind of courses I've taken function. I think it's underneath skills. You can add it there. You can ask perhaps the professor, if you're comfortable, to get a letter that states, signed by them, that states, you can even write it for them and ask them to sign it, that you've taken that course. It depends what kind of recognition you're looking for. I've never gotten that kind of formal recognition for auditing a course, but that said, like that, my intention for auditing that course was not about that. So it really depends what you need and why you're looking for it.
Yeah, yeah.
But throw it on your resume.
Yeah. Another question, what specific social media would you like to recommend? Sorry, what specific social media you would like to recommend us to contribute if we would like to write blogs or make podcasting?
Ooh, that's a lofty question. I think developing a personal brand or like a personal portfolio is never a bad idea. I used to have a website and I have let it lapse, and I need to get back on that just for my own personal writing. But if you want to do podcasts, definitely a display of your podcasting talent is important. So you could do something as simple as create a blog and like host audio files there. You can, like, Instagram's not the best auditory platform, although that is changing rapidly with IGTV and stuff. I would recommend like creating a personal website and filling it with content that you feel represents who you are and what you want to put out into the world. What platforms you choose is really about what you're looking to get out there. If you're a more visual person and you're looking to explore like photo essays, or I don't know, you're looking to aggregate content, I think, or create short videos, I do think Instagram is an incredible resource. Facebook is better for, it's good for short videos as well, but Facebook is better. I use it mostly for events or like bringing people together in a more conventional sense. Twitter it's great, especially if you're trying to reach media. Twitter is where they all live, but Twitter is a harder one to kind of create a robust following when you're looking to create longer content. Hosting all of that through like a centralized blog or personal site, I think, is your best bet.
Amazing. So we do have to wrap up now because we don't have a lot of time left. So I would really like to thank Jaime for being our last person that we're speaking to from the Power Plant Gallery. It's been an enormous pleasure to talk to you and the rest of your team. And Alpha Arts would really like to thank Josh Hoyman for connecting all of us and really setting this up, because it's been amazing. This has been very informative. And yeah, like Jaime said, please follow the Power Plant Contemporary Gallery on their social media, and also follow Alpha Arts, basically, because a lot of things are coming up and we have a lot of things planned that you should be excited about. So please feel free to connect with all of us. So I think that's it. Thank you so much, Jaime.
Thanks, Justin. This was great. Thanks for letting me ramble.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you to all of us who came out.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.